Welcome to the Value of Recruitment podcast with me, John Brooks. Sponsored by Atlas, the recruitment platform helping you become an AI-powered recruiter. This week, my guest is Mike Richards, CEO and founder of the Treasury Recruitment Co. Mike also hosts the Global Treasury Recruitment podcast and has recorded over 300 episodes with leaders in his sector. The podcast has evolved into an international event with live recordings and sponsorship. And we talk about how that gives Mike an incredible point of difference as a Treasury recruiter. We also talk about the value of data and how you can use salary surveys to give your clients an honest view of your integrity and your expertise. Mike shares some fantastic stories about how he's built long-standing relationships with his clients and how they keep coming back to him with the roles that he wants to work. Stick around until the end of the show for Mike's killer sales pitch and his advice on how to win new clients in under a minute. Enjoy the show. I hope you find it valuable. Mike, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank goodness. I've been the other side of the podcast microphone. We were just saying before, it's a little bit nerve-wracking, but be gentle with me, John.
No, you're a pro, and we're delighted to have you here. Now, I mean, I really am excited to have you here because you, in terms of doing things differently, it feels like everyone has a podcast these days, myself included. But You've really gone deep, and although in my eyes you've got a pretty narrow niche.
Yes,
you've interviewed over 325 people in that niche. I mean, I don't know how you haven't already interviewed every Treasury leadership person in your market, but that just puts you in such a powerful position, I think, in your market.
Well, I think we've talked about this before. You know, in the UK market, you've got your Fortune, your FTSE 100, your FTSE 250. So that's 250 of them, and then you go across Europe, that doubles up, so 500, and then you go to America, and it 10x's it. So and also don't forget about the Middle East, Far East as well, where we've had them right the way across. There are thousands of Treasury professionals out there, all working within the niche, same job title, but all doing it very differently, and that's what we explore each and every week on the podcast.
I love it. So what you're saying is 350 episodes, 325 episodes is scratching the surface. You're aiming for 1,000 plus. Yeah. I love it. Oh, yeah. Cool. Well, let's kick off with the biggest question. How valuable is recruitment in your eyes?
Well, I've done it 25 plus years. I mean, there are other jobs we could do, probably more valuable jobs, but no, recruitment found us, didn't it? So it's, lots of people fall into recruitment by accident. I did a little bit. I qualified as a teacher many years ago. We're not going to do too much of the bio, but someone should do teaching recruitment. Thought that, okay, do teaching recruitment. Loved that. Loved recruitment, actually. And then someone said, do finance recruitment and treasury. I was like, what's treasury? What's finance? Accountants? Maybe not. And then they went, it pays you twice as much. I went, great, where's my desk? Okay, I'll sit there. And discovered treasury folks. For those listening, very quickly, you've got three major reports into a finance director. You've got your tax person, trying to save tax, finance controller, looking today's money backwards, and treasury, which is the exciting bit of finance. I say, looking at the future and going to want to buy a company, want to do this, want to raise some cash, that's why I love talking to treasurers. Also on a personal level, they're very relationship focused, first to the bar, usually the last to leave it. I thought I found my people. So that was it. Yeah. And that was 20 odd years ago. And recruitment itself, I think it's just incredible industry. It's kept me interested, for all this time. People have said, anyway, I'm going to shut up. I'll let you carry on with the questioning, John. It's your show. I'll try and shut up now.
No, this is your episode. We want to hear from you. So what value does a great treasurer bring to a company? If you're talking to one of your clients and they say, oh, well, why do we have to pay your fee for you to find someone special? What does a special treasurer look like have that an average doesn't?
Well, although it depends on what some companies see. I was talking to a client this morning, or a candidate this morning rather, and he There's been a change of CFO. Previous CFO saw the treasurer as this visionary, looking at blockchain, all the latest developments in finance, all the different things that they could be doing. And then the new CFO's come in and said, right, you look after our cash, right? And he's like, yeah, that's one of the things I do, but I do all this. Whereas this CFO has a different view of treasury. That guy is just updating his CV and sending it through to me. So, what does a new treasurer do? What does a treasurer look at the future of finance, look at all this new stuff coming along, looking at automation, looking at all the other keywords. But at the end of the day, they look after your cash, look after your foreign exchange and risks, and make sure that your company is safe, if you like, as well as for the future, rather than financial controllers today and the past. So that's what they help you do. They ensure the safety of your company in some ways.
Okay, so when you're going into a client, you're saying, oh, by the way, I can keep your company safe.
Yeah.
Without the right person in, you're at risk, and all your cash is at risk.
Yeah, exactly.
That feels quite a nice. Yeah, that's quite a nice position at which to say, you need me. This is why I'm here for you.
And it's also, you'd asked me about the value of recruitment in my eyes and things like that. The people have said to me in the past, well, we could just use our generalist recruiter. Well, carry on. Off you go. It's like, but when you go and you've got a medical problem, and I know you've talked about this in the past, yes, your GP can treat you and they can make sure you are safe and not commit a harm. But when you've got that knee problem, or actually I need knee surgery, you don't get, oh, can you get my GP in to have a look? Can you get them to do the keyhole surgery? You want a specialist, and it saves you time, effort, but also that peace of mind. And, not doing that deliberately as a sales pitch, but it's much more, you don't have to use us. Go use GP. They're probably cheaper, or, that equivalent, use a generalist agency, that's fine. But if you use a specialist, we, quicker, easier. I'm just looking at some of my notes. We're the right solution. And in a way that makes you a little bit more powerful. That's not like you're just coming and look at me. It's much more, this is what we do. And it gives you sort of a level of confidence without arrogance.
Yeah. And you're right, actually. It is borderline arrogance, but without the negative connotations.
Yeah.
You need to project that confidence of, I am the specialist, which clearly you are. Yeah. I'm the specialist for this job, not for those other jobs, for this job. Absolutely, there are other ways to do things. You can do it yourself. You can ask your mates down the golf club, whatever. But if you want this done by the expert in this niche who does it properly, then come to me. If you don't want to, plenty of other people do. It's a powerful message.
And it's again, it's that, an inch wide, a mile deep. This is where we get our clients for the candidate, for the podcast, for what we actually do as a business, but also being a specialist. If someone's saying, oh, but it's mostly tax with some treasury, I'm like, look, here's a really great tax person. Some great tax recruiters. If someone's a senior finance person, I've got recommendations maybe in search firms and things. And they're like, oh, don't you want to do this? I went, no, it's not my niche. And it's, be prepared to walk away from it if you're not going to add the value. And there is a temptation sometimes, particularly when times are a bit more challenging or tougher, to go, oh yeah, we can do that. Well, you can. You're just going to waste a lot of time.
Yeah. I think that's really powerful, by the way, saying, oh, I can recommend someone else for that.
Yeah, I'd rather do it.
Because that client will say, wow, you are so good at what you do. There's no scrabbling around. Oh, can I also work that job? Can I also work that job? It's like, well, they only worked at that job. Clearly that client will say, well, when that job comes up, I have to work with Mike.
Yeah.
So you get the perfect jobs in your sweet spot and you don't have to worry. Just out of interest, you mentioned it's harder when times are tight. Like, how has that experience been? Have you been tempted to take on roles outside your niche, or how have you managed to stay strong and say, no, I'm still walking away. I'm still recommending a different recruiter for that role?
I think probably from experience, way back when, we go 25 years, so say call it 10, 15 years ago, maybe would have taken things that were Treasury or Treasury Plus or external to, that they had an interface with Treasury, and you think, oh yeah, we can do that, but ultimately it just ends in tears, because you'll do a lot of work, you might make a placement, but you're not making your life easy. You spend so much time researching and making sure that you do a good job that actually you're diluting what you actually do. And so again, that's why Treasury is us. And it's led to all the other offshoots that we'll talk about, but it just means that then you don't mix your messages, you don't dilute the brand, if you like, as well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, let's come on to how you stand out in your niche.
Yeah.
One of the phrases I use a lot is, I look for recruiters who are doing things differently. Now, I came across you through your podcast, and as I say, every man and his dog has a podcast.
Well, they do now, but they didn't before.
However, well, yeah, you've got history on your side. Yeah, you got that proof.
Yeah.
But it's not just any podcast. Let me just summarize, and then I want to hear all about it. You've done over 300 episodes, which, as I said earlier, like in my mind, you have such a small niche. Sounds like you've interviewed most people. And that's kind of snowballed into bigger things. You've mentioned to me your kind of slightly tongue-in-cheek global tour that you go on, and you get people to sponsor you to travel around the world doing the podcast. So I just love where that's gone. On the theme of doing things differently, sometimes for me, innovation is going deeper and doing things bigger. So there's nothing stopping anyone doing a podcast, and most people have. Those who've started a podcast on average have recorded 4 episodes.
Yep.
You're over 300. It's become a brand in its own right, and that's what's different. That's what's innovative. So tell us more about it, and tell us the impact it's made then for the business.
So if I take it back, and I'm sorry, I'm scribbling notes because there's some great points in there. I'm like, quick. When I originally thought about doing a podcast, I was listening to podcasts 10 years ago when they were first coming out on your device and everything else. And I thought about doing one about recruitment. And I thought, talking to recruiters every day, not so sure. I love recruiters. I'm a recruiter myself, but I just thought, how much value would I be able to give to that unless I was doing rec to rec, recruitment to recruitment, or unless I was talking to recruiters all the time. And there are some great ones out there now, like Hisham, who does his show, and some other really good, rec to rec shows. And I thought, as a Treasury recruiter, hang on, I enjoy talking to my clients. Maybe other people would like to hear their stories. How much bandwidth is there in that, talking to treasurers? And as I said at a conference recently, I was at the Eurofinance conference over in Barcelona. Someone said to me, well, I can't understand how you've done 300. Surely they're all the same thing. I went, yeah, great, because you do exactly the same as that guy next to you, right? And they're a treasurer. And they were like, well, no. No, I said, of course they don't. I said, but actually within 10 feet of me are 10 different treasurers, and you all have the same job title, but you all do it differently. Not just their jobs differently, but also their companies. One was cash rich, one was debt laden. Another one was a private company, one was a public company, one was centralized, one was decentralized. They all have different facets to their roles, their companies, and everything else. And that's where the richness of Treasury is. But they all have the same job title. They use a lot of the similar tools, but they all use them in different ways. And that's where and then also I thought, well, if I talk to them about lots of treasurers that have got in by accident, particularly in the UK, they get in by accident, and also a bit in the US, but in Europe, they tend to come from the banks. A lot of the time, they'll be corporate managers and they'll get to know treasurers, and then they step up into Treasury. And so that's where it came from, really. And I thought, well, hang on, if I talk to these guys about their stories, I've started to say it on some of the conference sessions I've done, as Tony Robbins says, success leaves clues. I love that. I only discovered it recently, but it was like, if I talk to them about their successful Treasury careers, what were the choices they made in education as they were developing their careers? Some of them decide to move across internationally. Some don't want to move internationally, but they move industries, or the different career choices they all make. That shows others. And if you're in that point of choice, you might be a treasury manager thinking, right, where do I make my next move? If you listen to our podcast, you might hear 5 different answers from different people, but one of those is going to resonate. And that's what we talk about each and every week about. And then we also talk about, at the end of each show, talk about some of the pressing issues. For some of them, it's where the world's going next. Might be political things are happening. It might be industry, might be different economies. So yeah, that's what we talk about. And then it's led to the Treasury Career Corner Live. I decided I wanted to go a few years ago to a gig in Luxembourg. So I said to my wife, right, we'll go across there. I'll talk to some treasurers over there live on stage like I do each week. Oh, yeah, okay, we said. And off we went. And that was very successful. And then I thought, okay, let's do another one in London. And then it snowballed. And you say tongue in cheek, I've just literally got back from global. This year I'm doing the global tour, but it started off earlier this year. I did 2 dates in New York Times Square. Followed it. Then Kyriba, the technology company, invited me, said, could you speak at our conference in Vegas? Followed by Texas. Did last Thursday, another date in London. Now we've actually got sponsors saying, could we be part of this? Could we be in a room with 140 treasurers? I'm like, okay, yeah, if you pay. And that's what's now paying for the business development for me to travel around the world. It's also led to us. I've recently been requested, could I do a session in Singapore, which they'll pay for? Could I do one in Dublin? I'm just looking at the list here, Netherlands. I've done sessions there before, but now they want me to go there. And to give people, again, the listeners, I will then interview 2 to 3 panelists live on stage. In New York, I interviewed the global treasurer of NASDAQ and the global treasurer of Endeavor about their treasury careers, talking to them exactly like in front of a live studio audience. And there were 70 people, some of the top treasurers in the world. The treasurer of Harley Davidson, treasurer of Colgate was sitting there in the audience. I'm like, I'm in my room with my people. I love it. So it's everything.
Yeah. And yeah, often I'm thinking, how do we, as recruiters, how do we stand out? How do we differentiate ourselves?
Yeah.
How are we seen as valuable? Now, yeah, you just list off all of those dream clients and some top candidates potentially for you. They're either paying to come and see you, or they're giving up their time to come and see you and network with you afterwards. You're literally on a pedestal.
Yeah.
You're literally on stage there, and they're looking up to you, which completely then changes the conversation around, well, do they value you? If they're asking, well, I'm sure they come to you and say, will you work with us? Rather than you have to chase us for a job.
Well, it's also
because they're turning up, they're in your audience.
But it's also developing a community. At the previous London event in November, lots of candidates were coming up to me when it was the great thing is 140 Treasury people in a room. I'm like, wow, it's just sort of explode, like Doctor Who, it's like, this is great. But more than that, they said, oh, you're really developing a community. And that's why we're doing it, to support them, help them develop their treasury careers. And I was doing, again, you're helping them as treasury professionals. You're helping them if they're candidates. You're also helping them if they're clients, to see it from both sides. And that's why we do it, because we want to deliver that value to all of them. And that's one of the things.
Yeah.
And it's not all just altruistic, oh, great, do it. The key thing is now, when a client comes to us and said, do you know any treasury managers? And I say, well, yeah, I sat in a room with 30 of them just on Thursday. And, a load of those people are looking. And then I did the same in Texas. I was there, at the conference. It was 800, well, I think it was 1,000 people. And I was meeting lots of those treasury professionals. It's a great way to expand our US business. I've got Joe, my guy over there, and things. Because we provide, pay it forward, And yeah, it's, one thing I have had to do though, and I just recently re-recorded my end segments of my podcast, because one of the bits of feedback was I was being asked, so are you like a podcaster and then you do some recruitment on the side? I was like, no, I'm a recruiter who does podcasting on the side, because, so we had to go back to the value proposition to say to those people that, no, recruiter first, podcaster second-ish sort of thing, because, and yeah, that's how we pay that's the day job. But we can do all this other sexy stuff with the salary survey and everything else, which is, I think, another way that we've come across each other.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some recruiters have argued actually you do lead with the community. Yeah, if you have a network, if you have a community, that allows you to deliver the recruitment service. So yeah, really interesting. A couple of interesting things for recruiters to reflect on, just in hearing it in another industry. Firstly, you said a lot of Treasury people fell into Treasury.
Yeah.
Now we hear that a lot in recruitment. I think you said at the start. That doesn't mean I don't think we would look down on Treasury people. They have become experts in what they do. And likewise, I see that in recruiters. You can have fallen into recruitment once you've been doing it 10, 20 years and doing it well. Yeah, you are a professional who provides a huge amount of value. Secondly, and almost equally as common, is you said Treasury people looking around saying, oh, aren't we all the same? Wouldn't those podcasts all just be the same thing? Now I get that because I work with recruiters, recruitment agencies.
Yeah.
And the agency owner will say, oh, aren't we all the same? No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's not just that the sector is different. It's that the delivery is different. It's that the beliefs is different. It's the, even the mindset and the educational background, the skill set you bring creates so many differences that, yes, we're all doing recruitment in the same way your Treasury lot are all doing Treasury. But what did you say? The richness. That's where it gets interesting.
Yeah. Well, the diversity.
And if we can,
well, that's it.
And if we can bring that up to our clients.
Yeah. That's the key thing and also it's not, we've talked there about the podcast and the Treasury curriculum, but before that, they ever started way back when I started the Treasury Recruitment Company in 2002, I then started doing a salary survey, because one of my previous companies, you can work out, go on LinkedIn and people can see that, their salary survey is made up, which I always found a real, there was one of the questions you asked about in our pre-thing about honesty and integrity. And I remember working at that company and someone said, how do you make a choice? What advice do you give to a candidate or client? And I'd gone through 7 steps of success or whatever it was, habits thing. And one of the things it makes you do is look at your values. And all I came up with eventually, or kept on boiling them down, was act with honesty and integrity in all things. So that if I thought a job was good for a candidate, I tell them to take it. If I thought it wasn't, I'd tell them not to take it. And that made me the biggest biller of that company in the world and was very successful. But I remember having to pop out of the office at one stage, this many years ago, they can't come back to me, pretending in the office, take the job. And then I had to phone up this guy, Mark, who we're still friends with, and said, right, I know that this isn't the right job for you. And, well, you just told me. I said, no, I'm just because I'm sitting next to my boss and he's not acting with integrity. I don't think you should take that. And we're still friends now. Because also he was going to get a mortgage at that stage. I knew that would have gone south, everything. And I just thought, so always act with those, even in the difficult times. And that meant it was always, in a way, easiest. If that's your weather vane, your North Star, it makes it a lot easier. And again, you go back to challenges about going into other diverse businesses by sticking with Treasury, sticking to a knitting, doing with that, it makes it easier in those times of choice. But again, we did our salary survey. That was the thing I was going to say, that we do our salary survey to add value. It doesn't make us any money. It's not sponsored. It's anything else. But the fact is, when I go in with a client and they say, well, we're thinking about recruiting a treasury analyst at this salary. I go, so you want to be paying 20% less than the average? And like, well, no. Well, how do you know that? Well, what makes you know that? Well, we've surveyed 80 treasury analysts and you're this much further below the average. And that, oh, okay. And we do this because we survey over 1,000 treasury professionals on an ongoing basis. And we do that through our CRM tracker, and it's been very useful. And we really integrated that. People keep asking me, how do you do it? We just keep on, you keep the information up to date, and it revolves and it works really well. So that, again, is another way to add value. So it's not just the podcast, although that's a key
one. Yeah, and that value, again, I think recruiters can undervalue their perspective on the industry.
Yeah.
And again, when you've got a niche, it's easier, but you still have to do that work. But when a client comes, that client, the example you gave a minute ago, they are not deliberately aiming 20% under the market average for that salary.
Knowledge.
They just, they don't have that data.
Yeah.
We have that data. Now, some people have that data. You might not call it data. It might be more anecdotal.
Fictional numbers.
No, you've still got a gut feel if you are talking to treasury analysts every day. Not the dubious salary surveys that someone else sends out.
The dubious ones, sorry, I won't go on my high horse. I'll try not to. Step down, Mike. Step down off the high horse. But when I was originally asked, they said, what's your gut feel for what the lowest paid treasury analyst is? And I went, well, it's about that. And they said, what's the highest one? I said, about that. And they said, great, that's our range. I went, no, those are just numbers in my head. Yeah, but that'll do. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And also, I was approached by a company back last year. I won't name and shame them because hopefully I think I've blocked it out. But they were saying what they were doing was they were scraping data from all these job adverts and then saying, well, that's the salary range for these jobs. And I'm like, no, that's the salary range that jobs are being advertised at. That's just made up data. Yeah, but that's what we think the market is paying. I was like, OMG. I was just like, right, I definitely didn't want to work with that company. I had this chat with them and I was like, right, that's not me. Ours is drawn from real data. We check everyone. I speak to them. We know that they're real treasury professionals. We have some of our rivals who do their ones and they go, oh, just tell us this information. They don't ask for their name. We know who that person is, and we check their data because we know them. We've spoken to them for 5-10 years or whatever. So it just makes us powerful.
Yeah. The longevity has come up a couple of times, and that's really interesting. Well, for both the podcast and the salary survey, when you started them, did you think, for example, with the podcast, it would turn into was the plan to have a world tour?
No. The plan was I like the idea of podcasts. I like talking to my clients, and I thought, let's see where this goes. And there are recommendations I would perhaps make to people in the future. We've done an episode every single week since pre-COVID, 325 without a break. If I were to tell anyone else, I would say, don't do it like that. Do it in episodics, so do sort of 10 in an episode, release a box set, have a bit of a break, look at it and everything else. Ours has evolved over time, which is great, but it's a heck of a lot of work, which can sometimes be a challenge. But if you integrate the processes, it's really good. I have Carly, amazing PA, researcher, everything. If you like doing sales, I'd probably be working for Carly. She's amazing. So she helps me organize the podcast. We approach the guests. It's also become easier to get podcast guests now. When I first started, don't underestimate that as well. That was very, very tough. I was going to say some other words, which I won't, because you don't want an explicit warning on your podcast. It's also quite different. If you mentioned about different geographies, if we ask guests in the UK and Europe, will you be a guest on the podcast? Their general response is, send me the details, I'll think about it. And then people said, well, why have you got so many US podcast guests? And I said, well, because I go to a US guest and they say, send me the details, or say, when are we going to do it? Send me the details. I'm like, what? Okay, yeah. They seem to be much more open. I think maybe it's just the culture that they're open to more PR and everything else. And I think that certainly helps me in my life.
I think thinking about innovation, and if listeners do want to do
Yeah.
things differently, that's a really good reminder that you don't have to start with some grand plan of,
Yeah.
I'm going to have sponsors paying me to travel the world speaking at top conferences. Just start something with a good idea and see where it takes you. Once you do something a little bit different, it opens more doors, and keep taking those opportunities.
John,
And I've had that. Years.
I was going to say, if someone's listening today, and if I were to look back and they think, oh, yeah, it's all great, and they're talking to someone who's done 300 plus, blah, blah, blah. Think about your best 10 or 12 clients, write them down, reach out to them, see who might have a conversation with you about either someone that would like this, about them and their careers, or, what you think is an issue for your industry, and just talk to 10 of them and record it and check with them the recording. We always get permission and everything else. The amount of value you could add, and everyone's going, oh, we'll do, like Diary of a CEO and do them all on YouTube and all this. You don't need to. Just have a conversation, or do it like this over Riverside or Zoom, or, we're all used to this now. And actually clients are much more used to that. Now my clients are up for maybe being on video. When I first started, I asked, oh, will you be on video? No. So, think about it, will you? That now they're like, oh, do you want to do it on video? You're like, yeah, okay. So we record on video, for instance, the live panel sessions that I did in Texas came out to be a really great session. And it's some great value for that audience, but also any listeners, as these two tremendous treasurers talk about how they made mistakes in their careers. One of them talks about how he didn't study the exams till actually he became a treasurer, but he then did it because he thought he had to do it to be, because he was on the board of the Treasury exams. He was like, yeah, maybe I should do this as well. So it was a great story, but the great thing was it was sharing, and again, it's sharing that with people as well. So I think there's also that, just get started, just get stuck in.
Yeah. I love the fact that you have that kind of anecdote at that level as well. Like if you think about when you need an icebreaker just to get in with a new business, just being able to say, oh, I was talking to the head of Treasury qualifications the other day, on the board or whatever, and he told me this. It completely changes the power dynamic in the room. You are the Treasury expert, and they just happen to work in a business running a Treasury team.
Yeah.
I remember an anecdote. You should tell it, but I'll prompt it. I think someone called you and said, oh, do you know our business? Do you know what we do? And you had just interviewed his boss or something. Was that right?
Yeah. Well, it happens quite a lot, to be honest. It's it's quite a game changer. It's like, yeah, I should do. I've just, interviewed your boss because I placed them and they used to do your job. And they were like, well, yeah, because they got promoted. I went, I know, I placed them. And they were like, oh, and you know this guy? Yeah. And it's, and some of our clients now, for instance, we do a lot of recruit for Porsche. And that's how you say it, because that's how they tell me to say it over in Germany. I interviewed originally Wolfgang. He was brilliant on the podcast. So I'd interviewed him. He was streamlining the Treasury team because they had lots of other areas. They downsized the team, and he called me and he said, right, we've taken the team from 50 people to 32, whatever it was, by moving people around, didn't lose people. And I was like, oh, it's that phone call where he then sends me a CV. I was like, oh, right. He said, no, I'm not leaving. I was like, oh, okay. He said, no, we now need to recruit 12 people. I was like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. And he said, actually, no, that's not true. You need to recruit 12 people. Okay, goodness. And that was a couple of years ago now. And since then, we've recruited 6-7 people. And we actually use the podcast with the potential candidates. So when we're recruiting, we put it as part of the job description and say, look, listen to this to understand his career journey and what his ethos is about Treasury and how he wants people to come and embrace modern Treasury. And that's been one of the game changers as well, that you don't just know your client, they like and trust you, that, but actually you really know your client because you've talked to them for an hour, but then it deepens the understanding that you're working with them, not just as an agency. You become more consultative, but then you actually become, a real consultant to the business about salaries and the conversations we've had and all the different issues they face. You get to share that with the client as well.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, the fill rate, the finding the right fit, the attrition rate must go down as well, because people have in effect sat in on that, potential candidates have sat in on that interview you've had with Wolfgang.
Yeah.
They know his philosophy. They know when he's going to shout at them. They know when he's going to praise them. They know what he sees as good.
Yeah.
And either they say, I like that, I'm on board. I want to work with him for the next 5 years.
And he doesn't shout. I've got to say, he might have a stern word, but Wolfgang doesn't shout. But when he has a stern word, you pay
apologies.
No, it's all right.
I have besmirched the good name of Wolfgang. I take that back.
Okay, we escaped it because I corrected it with that. But you know what his line in the sand is, and exactly what it's like, and that's what he has exceptionally high standards, but then they get it, sort of thing.
Yeah. And interestingly, although that information is public,
yeah,
in theory, another recruiter could say, oh, listen to Wolfgang, he's explained what his philosophy is and what he wants for his new recruits. You're leading that, so yeah. you own that conversation in terms of then sharing it with candidates. And another recruiter can't piggyback off you without coming across as very, very cheeky.
Well, they can't talk about the fact that he grew up in a dairy farming family, and some of his holiday jobs. You don't want to hear about dealing with cows and everything else, and all the different challenges. And we're talking about this on the podcast. I'm thinking, okay, this wasn't where I thought it was going to go. We're talking high-tech cars and everything else. But you actually, then those clients are now becoming friends, and that's the nice thing is, they are, clients, but then they start to move that. And that's also made it easier. When I had the chat the other day with Fred and with Tamara for my session in Texas, I just felt so comfortable talking to them. It was some of the ones you get a bit nervous because I'm thinking about it's a new conference, where it is and everything else. Sometimes it's a lot easier sort of thing because, yeah, it's just quite funny really in that sense.
Yeah. Just thinking of conferences in general, I'm a massive advocate of recruiters going to conferences and events in their niche. I think in general, we don't do it enough. Why sit in the office making cold calls? Well, if you've been to every big event for the last 2 years, you will bump into people, you will see people, and then you can have conversations about those things. Now, most of the time as a supplier, you'd have to pay to get that conference or find a way to sneak in, whereas you are now being invited as the headline speaker.
Well, and then it goes to the next level. Now they're my conferences. Now I own that audience. Now I own what's happening. That's because, I have got some more that coming up this year where I'm, getting on a plane, heading to the US. It's great. I'm headlining one of the sessions in Chicago, but actually then I'm thinking, hang on, I want to be leading this. When I did my 2 events in New York, I was terrified because I thought on the first night we had 50 people. Well, at one stage I thought, are we going to have anyone in this room? This is going to be a nightmare because there was torrential rain outside. Yeah. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen? And literally 50 people still showed up, and I'm like going, this is amazing. But the thing was, it was my event, and yes, once that had passed, it was a lot better, sort of thing. So yeah. Hopefully they. Talk about valuing things. If you can slog through the New York rain to get to a conference, if people are coming to
Yeah, and if people coming to see you, that's proof that you have something of value. That they want to see you.
And I think also, without, as the headline, the other thing I would say about that is more, we were providing the value. I was providing a forum, and and John, you talked there about conferences. I love going to conferences for the right reasons, but also I think that actually people, again, we had 100 people last week in London. People want to be back in the room face to face. They're tired of, I was congratulating the audience for getting up off their posteriors, getting it, making the effort to come to the City of London, come and meet other Treasury professionals. The vibe and the amount of emails I got on the Friday going, that was amazing. It was just thanks, and you want to go back to all of them, but there was like, ping, another one. Oh, I got on with this person. And you're just like, there is a need for it. And people want to be back in person. They don't just want to, in the nicest way, do it over Riverside or Zoom. I'm looking forward to meeting up with yourself soon. That's what people want. They want human contact.
Yeah, I wrote something on this recently. Well, it's a slightly related topic, but one way recruiters can add value is we don't have to be experts in everything. We can be the connector.
Yeah.
We can connect our clients to really niche experts, more niche than recruitment. So if they need an assessment expert or a diversity and inclusion expert, we probably know someone and they probably don't, unless they have a real interest in recruitment and HR and diversity. And in the same way, you are adding value on the stage, but you can add value as a convener as well. Someone's got to put these events on. Why not recruitment agencies? Why not? Just book a space, get people in, and say, look, the value is in you talking to each other, and I'm putting this on for you. I'd like to have those conversations, and let's all get value from it.
And I think that's it. But it's also to think about what will be most valuable to them as audience participants as well. The panelists I had the other day, incredible. Steve from Intermediate Capital, Diane from TI Automotive, Dan Ferguson from Resolution Life. There were 3 quite diverse panelists, but all did Treasury, all had slightly different angles. Everyone was, you had Dan, education wise, he went to university for 1 day. He did that on live on stage. It was all right. He said, went to university 1 day, decided it wasn't for him. That was it, Bob. Whereas you had Steve, who'd done a lot more education in a different way, more formally. But the fact was they were both very successful treasurers. And, and that was the thing, to bring their stories to life, because they don't really have that forum. They might be there talking about treasury management system, but hang on, just, if I can facilitate that, it just makes it more human as well.
Yeah, I love it. Zooming out again.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on how we can make recruitment more valued by our clients? From my perspective, we want to be able to charge our clients good fees, so that we run profitable businesses that can deliver great services. Some people do that, but it's a challenge, and I think we all want to improve on that. So how can we get those clients to value recruitment more?
I think probably the first thing is probably take a mirror to ourselves in the nicest way and look at, are we providing the value that we should be and that we should think about? I.e., we do the salary survey, we do the value add, every other way that we can add, through the podcast, through the events, through all that. It's, there's nothing worse than a recruiter picking up the phone to a client and say, hello, got any jobs? Oh, go away. Yep. Why are you doing this? Like, get off my phone. I get those phone calls, oh, do you want a photocopy it? No, go back to the 1980s. Sorry, that doesn't work anymore. If we are having an inbound phone call, if clients are calling us, it's all about that. That's why I've said to these, the guys in the team as well, I said, it's about the more value we add, the more reason there will be for a client to call us through. If you're a candidate, we do videos about CVs, what they should look like, interview technique, all the different pain points, and giving them advice about when's the right time to make the next move. More outbound. It's a lot of work. I think that's one of the things that I would notice, that from 20 years ago, it was much easier in some ways. Put up an advert, loads of people came, you sifted them through, put forward your long list, short list, someone made a hire. Great. Now there's a lot of noise around it as well. And you can't just, who's our key competition? Probably LinkedIn, so, and, one of the key things, I had it recently with a client in the US, and they did their US advert, and they had 120 plus. They sifted through 80. They got down to sort of 30 phone calls. They spoke to a load of them. They interviewed 10, and then they spoke to me. And I was like, oh, so how did it go then? They went, well, we're talking to you, aren't we? So, oh, okay. And they said, well, we don't understand why it didn't work out. And I said, well, look, the problem with LinkedIn is LinkedIn. At LinkedIn, you will get people applying for any job. They don't really want a job with you. They just want another job. They're trying to leave an unhappy home. They want to go somewhere else, and you could be it. But they don't really care that this was, I can say it out loud because it was Amcor. And they said they don't really want to come and join your company. They just want to get out of XYZ, and you're the next stop. Now, that doesn't make them someone that wants to come to you. I introduced them then to 5 people that wanted their next career step. And that's where you add the value. And it sounds like a sales pitch is not meant that way. What it means is that we can add the value with, and one of the other questions, sorry to jump on this, John, you asked me before to think about, and it was actually some very good reflective questions. They were quite tough ones, by the way. If anyone else is, watch out, this Brooks guy, he's a bit of a bully. He was like, right, answer this, Mike, answer this. So I was like, okay, they're really good questions.
Don't put people off.
No.
I need to get to 325 podcast episodes.
You keep going. The great thing, it was really great because it made me think, right, okay. And it was, what makes us special? And there was some of the bits, we are that one stop for global treasury. And it was quite interesting when I was looking. So tonight we've got a call with myself and my colleague Joe in the US about recruiting a treasurer on the west coast of the US. Tomorrow we're meeting a client who's in London with Katie, my colleague, and we're talking about recruiting them a treasurer in the Netherlands. And then on Wednesday morning, I've got a Zoom call with a Singaporean client who needs a head of treasury in London and their team in the Middle East. We're all going to be like, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. It's just like, it's a lot of work, but the fact is 3 incredible opportunities. And that's where the globalness and the internet, that's where we can add value. That's where it comes back to with clients, where we add value is they can ask us, well, what's it going to cost us to get someone on the west coast of the US? What's it going to cost? And what's the salary? What's this? What are the dynamics of each of those markets? Yeah, it's sometimes brain stretching, but the fact is it's great fun.
Yeah, and I often come back to the fact our clients just can't do this. If they are great, in your example, if they are great at being a treasury leader, they can't also be checking out salaries in Singapore.
No.
They need to be focused on the cash, on the keeping the business they're employed by safe. Whereas we have the time to geek out over that data, to build those relationships, that community, as you say.
Yeah, and that's what I love doing. And again, I feel someone listening. Treasury, really get on. Talk about something else. We talk rugby later on, but we'll do that in the pub. And that's where I've got to, and I'm passionate for it because I've done it for so many years. I've had some difficult, challenging experiences. I spoke to someone today actually who worked for one of my old companies, and the great thing was he'd had the same experience. And when they were very, very, they lacked integrity, should we say? Let's do it nicely. And he had the same experience. And the fact was, it makes it easy. If you just think in the moment of choice, just think what's best for the client and the candidate, or the other way around. Actually, they're both the same. That's the other nice thing for us as well. If we place someone as a candidate, give them good advice, they become a client, then we place them in as a senior treasury manager, treasurer, let's say assistant treasurer, they get promoted. They come back to us. So it comes back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about integrity and that honesty, which makes me think I'm very big into, like, in order to get that across to clients, it has to be show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Because if you look on any recruitment website, it will say our values are, we are honest and we are blah, blah, blah. So every single agency in the country says they're honest, which I think law of averages isn't true. When the chips are down, sometimes that integrity is lost. So show, don't tell is really important. You can do that through words. You have to work pretty hard to get that across. But again, these platforms you've got allow your clients to experience you and therefore experience your values because they've spent an hour on a podcast with you, or because they've got through the rain, the biblical rains of New York to spend some time with you. And you've shown your gratitude for them being there, and they really know you. So again, I mean, that partly leads back to my point about get out to conferences, make sure your clients really know you, rather than, very worst case, getting a cold call from you saying, "Oh, you got any jobs?"
Well, I think also you touched on it there, but and what's the word? I think we were rubbish at it. We are still a work in progress about getting testimonials and going to clients, because they once they do it, we do a sigh of relief, and they do the same. Like, oh, we got them on board, But then it's actually that's where the work starts a lot of the time as well, and we've got better at it. We still need to work harder at it. That when you place someone in there, it's like touching base when they start. It's then meeting them for a coffee a month in, and then going to the client, saying, right, how is that person settling in? Fantastic. Making sure they embed into the organization. But the more that that's where your work can start, and we put words by it, and then get a decent testimonial from them, because social proof, as we know, is just golden. When it's there and it's meant and it's real. And also, what is it that, one person has a bad experience, they tell 10 people, 8 people, whatever it is. One person has a good experience, they only tell 2 or 3. But so we've got to make lots of people have lots more good experiences of recruitment. So that's where
I don't want
to go on.
I don't want to put anyone off who might be thinking of working with me, but I've started just pulling my iPhone out at the end of a session with a client and saying, if I'm face to face with them, and saying, great, can we just record something right now? Don't think about it too hard. Just get something down. And I've got some nice testimonials on LinkedIn, but again, words they just don't have the impact of seeing someone in person.
No, exactly. And that's, the only challenge for me, a lot of treasurers aren't that still. They will start to do video over, we talked earlier about podcasting and things. They're more comfortable with that, but getting a video testimonial, I love that. Whereas we as recruiters are used to that. They aren't, and they're not so comfortable. So, but the great thing is we have our track record. When people ask us about, prove to us. And we then actually go out, we have a track record document, which is, we list for our clients the placements we've made. Inevitably, they'll probably know some of those people or know the companies or both. And they go, oh, so you recruited for them. And some of them, they'll be their competitors. Some of them will be people that they admire. And actually that, sells to them, because they go, okay, so the kind of people we want. Yeah.
To wrap up, because we could talk all day and we haven't even touched on rugby. But to wrap up the value conversation, obviously price and value, a lot of that comes down to negotiation, and it's relatively common for recruiters to be pushed hard by their clients. How low can you go? You've got to match other people. So recruiters are under pressure. Have you found that the more you've the more you stand out and the more successful you've become in your podcast, negotiation has changed?
I think, I don't know if the podcast has made a difference in negotiation. I think it's given us a little bit more confidence as a company. When I'm going into it also means that I know the people that I'm talking about. You'd actually asked me before the show what was best and worst experience of negotiation. I was sort of trying to think of a few of them. The worst ones are when, and I've seen you doing the post about these, John, that, we regularly get clients who hear about us, maybe they've seen it on the podcast, but they've already advertised through LinkedIn, done that full thing. Then they've gone to their preferred supplier list. The preferred supplier list of 10 people that will, the lowest bidder wins. Yeah. Oh, we're on your PSL. Oh, along with these other people at 10%. And, and because that they're not giving the best value because they can't at 10%. Why would they do that? Then they'll go to the others they may have heard about. And then we might get approached. Oh, I've heard your podcast. Yeah. Can you help us? Oh, will you match them? Like what? What? Because there's an article actually that I did, and it's about how we defend our fees and everything else. It's actually on our website. I need to republish it actually and bring a bit more. Whereas Marcus Sheridan, they ask, you answer, and it was about going to your customers and explaining why you charge your fees the way you do, and actually explaining that value. So that's very powerful. I think the flip side is one of the best negotiation pieces was I recruited a treasurer a few years ago for Senior PLC. I met Derek Harding, a very successful CFO, went for a meeting, coffee, told me all about the role. And then suddenly he looked at his watch and went, crumbs, I've only got 5 minutes. I was like, oh, he'd got his time slightly wrong. You've got 5 minutes to sell yourselves to me. And I'm like, okay, 5 minutes. I said, I'm not going to, Derek, I'm not going to sell myself to you. Because you've already got it. And he said, you've already got a recruiter that you said you'd like to use, a search recruiter. Yeah. He said, right. Do you know what, Derek? Use your search recruiter because they will do a great job. And you like and trust them and everything else. In 6 weeks' time, they will have gone out, searched the market, and they'll try and find you the treasurer that you want. But what they will do is they will find, a load of treasurers that are looking for a new job. And he was like, yeah. I said, but I've got that list today. Here you go. Here's those people now. In 4 to 6 weeks, I will have a list of people that want a job with you. And he went, that's a great sales line, Mike. I went, I know, I've been practicing 20 years. It's true, though, because I know the people that are out there in the market, and I will probably be able to match some of those people straight away. But actually to go and join them, a company where they're based in Watford and wanting this and actually not Watford, Rickmansworth rather, and, wanting all this stuff and very specific skill set. I said, look, these are who I'm going to target. This is a search I'm going to do. And this was all done in under 2-3 minutes. We won the deal. But we won the deal because we were, recognized he had a preferred supplier. I said, look, we don't do anything different to them except for the value we've talked about on this show where we're a specialist and we've already got that. For them, it's their first ever treasury search. For us, it's not. It's what we do every day.
Yeah. And I love elevating that as well. Yeah. Again, recruitment is not always the same. No. It's like, right, you can recruit like this. We can go a step further. And what you've added there is just such a level of clarity, perhaps because you only had 5 minutes, but such a level of clarity that the client can say, okay, these are my choices. I'd be crazy not to choose the elevated service because it's an important role.
Yeah.
And as you say, you get the job.
Let's leave it there. I could do that pitch in 2 minutes. I don't need 5. And I think that if anyone is thinking about it, think about it if you're listening today and get your elevator pitch, literally the elevator pitch. All I do is treasurers. That's it. People go, oh, okay. What else? But no, that's it. That's all I do. And that's short and sweet. But can you do this? No, I can't. I do treasurers. That's it.
I'm the same. I can't do a minute's elevator pitch.
Why would you?
I help recruiters with their pricing. Yeah, that's it. I'm not going to do anything else. So, can I make you a coffee or something? Wonderful. Thank you for sharing your value and the way you add value to your clients today. Good luck with the next 1,000 or so podcasts, by which point you will have interviewed everyone in your niche.
Well, maybe. But then the good thing is people would have replaced them. By that stage, there'll be new treasurers. They will have moved onwards, and we follow their careers as well, and we diversify as well. I just love doing it. It's really cool.
Perfect. Well, that really came through, and I hope everyone listening has kind of taken inspiration from how much you love that. Thanks again, Mike, and good luck with it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks.
Thanks again to Mike. We covered so much across some really important topics. 3 things stood out for me. First, the amazing way he's built his community and the depth of understanding he has for what his clients and candidates value. Sometimes that just means putting people together at an event and getting out of their way. They appreciate you for bringing them together. Second, the discussion we had around innovation and doing things differently. Podcasts are not new and the barriers to entry are low, but Mike has made his podcast a point of difference by going bigger than everyone else, and that has led to even more innovation and value. And third, how Mike described the value of a great treasurer, keeping the company and its cash safe. That's huge to me. Finding the right person to do that feels incredibly valuable, and Mike has built his business on knowing which candidates will fit with which clients. Now, if you found the show valuable, please leave a review and remember to subscribe or follow the show on your podcast app. You can also get more insights and inspiration from me by signing up to my added value emails on Substack. You can find the link in the show notes. Thank you to Atlas for sponsoring the Value of Recruitment podcast. To learn more about how Atlas is creating an AI platform that helps recruitment agencies generate more placements with less effort, visit recruitwithatlas.com.